The crowd was buzzing with excitement as Elon Musk took the stage. It was the event of the year, a packed auditorium filled with tech enthusiasts, investors, and curious onlookers. Musk, as usual, was the center of attention. Confident, charismatic, and brimming with ideas that could change the world. But something unexpected was about to happen. From the back of the room, a young voice cut through the noise. "Mr. Musk, I have a question." It rang out, sharp and clear, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. The audience fell silent, turning to see a small figure standing in the aisle, hands tucked confidently behind his back. He was barely 10 years old, his face a mixture of determination and curiosity. His name was Kris, a name that most had never heard of before but would never forget after today. Musk, momentarily taken aback, paused his speech. His sharp eyes scanned the young boy. "And you are?" he asked, his voice smooth but laced with a hint of surprise. "I'm Kris," the boy said, walking to the front of the stage with a calmness that didn't match his age. "And I've been studying your work. I think I can do better." A ripple of disbelief passed through the crowd. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Some intrigued, others skeptical, but all were watching intently. Musk's lips curled into a smile, but there was a hint of something more behind his gaze. "Better, huh?" he said, leaning forward slightly, the challenge clear in his voice. "How exactly do you plan on doing that?" Kris didn't flinch. Instead, he looked Musk in the eye, his expression unwavering. "By doing what you couldn't, making space travel affordable and practical for everyone. I'm not just here to ask questions. I'm here to change the game." The room was dead silent. It was as if time had slowed. Every eye was on the young boy, who stood alone against the tech mogul, his words heavy with confidence. Musk raised an eyebrow. "You think you can change the game?" he asked, amusement flickering in his tone. "You're just a kid." Kris smiled, the corners of his mouth curling up in a way that suggested he wasn't backing down. "Age doesn't define intelligence. And if you won't take me seriously, I'll make you." The challenge hung in the air, thick and electric. The tension was palpable. What would you do if you had the chance to face your idol like Kris did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Kris was not like other kids. While most children spent their days playing video games or playing outside, Kris could often be found with his nose buried in books about quantum physics, space exploration, or artificial intelligence. At just 10 years old, his mind was a whirlwind of ideas and concepts far beyond his years. Born to a middle-class family in a quiet neighborhood in California, Kris's genius wasn't something that developed overnight. It was something that had always been there, like a fire that burned quietly but intensely. From the moment he could read, he devoured books, his parents barely able to keep up with his insatiable curiosity. They were proud, of course, but they often found themselves overwhelmed by his brilliance. At school, Kris was a mystery to most of his classmates. While other children struggled with math homework, Kris solved equations that even the teachers couldn't comprehend. His teachers, equally baffled and impressed, often asked him for help with complex problems. But despite his incredible intellect, Kris wasn't popular. Kids his age couldn't relate to him, and his parents were often too busy managing their own lives to understand the complexity of his world. It wasn't that Kris didn't want friends. He tried. He would sit at lunch, attempting to join in conversations about the latest superhero movie or the new video game everyone was playing. But the topics didn't excite him. Instead, his thoughts were always consumed with bigger questions. Questions that no one around him seemed interested in answering. At home, his parents tried their best to keep up. His mother, Priya, a dedicated school teacher, would often help him with his school projects. His father, Raj, an engineer, encouraged him to explore technology and gave him access to the latest gadgets. But it was clear that their son was on a different path, one they couldn't fully understand, despite their best efforts. Kris's moments of joy came in small, quiet moments. There were evenings when he would sit on the rooftop of their house, staring at the stars, imagining what it would be like to travel to other worlds. Space, he decided, was the key to understanding everything. But despite all his brilliance, there was a loneliness that crept in when the lights of the city dimmed and the world around him fell into slumber. In a way, Krish's genius was both his greatest gift and his greatest curse. It set him apart, but it also created a wall between him and others. He often wondered if he would ever find someone who truly understood him, the way his mind worked, the way he saw the world. But even in his loneliness, there was a fire inside him that wouldn't let him rest. He wanted more than just recognition for his intelligence. He wanted to change the world. And to do that, he needed a challenge big enough to show everyone what he was capable of. Elon Musk was that challenge. The tech mogul represented everything Kris aspired to be: bold, visionary, and unafraid to push the boundaries of possibility. Musk's accomplishments, from launching rockets to creating electric cars, had captured Kris's imagination. But there was something else that intrigued him, a desire to understand how Musk's mind worked. How did he approach problems? What drove him to build things that no one else thought possible? Kris knew that to truly make a difference in the world, he had to confront his hero. He had to test himself against the best, even if it meant risking everything. At the dinner table, the Aurora family sat together, though it was clear that the meal had become more of a formality than a time for connection. Kris sat at the end of the table, his plate barely touched as his mind was occupied elsewhere. His mother, Priya, looked at him with concern, but she didn't know how to reach him anymore. "You haven't eaten your food again, Kris," Priya said softly, her voice filled with both love and worry. "You need to take care of yourself." Kris barely glanced at his plate. "I'm thinking," he mumbled, his gaze still distant. His father, Raj, looked up from his own plate, trying to bridge the gap. "Thinking is fine, son, but you also need to stay healthy. You've been spending so much time on your projects. It's important to have balance." Kris's mind raced through the equations and theories he had been studying all day. The concepts of space-time, the potential for human exploration beyond Earth. It was all too consuming. He wanted to build something extraordinary, something that would leave a mark on the world. But his parents didn't seem to understand. "Balance isn't going to solve the world's problems," Kris snapped, his voice tinged with frustration. "If I don't do this, no one will." Priya's eyes softened, but she was tired. She had been trying to keep their family life normal, but it was difficult when her son was a prodigy, consumed by his own thoughts, often too wrapped up in his ideas to connect with anyone around him. Raj, on the other hand, tried to be practical, wanting Kris to follow a more conventional path, a path where success could be measured by simple achievements. "Kris," Raj began, trying to be patient. "You're brilliant, we know that. But you don't have to do everything alone. You're still a kid. There's time for everything." Kris slammed his fork down on the table, the sound echoing through the quiet room. "You don't get it. Time isn't something I have. People like Elon Musk, they don't waste time. I'm not going to wait for the world to catch up. I have to make them see it now." Priya sighed, exchanging a worried glance with Raj. She had seen this before. The tunnel vision that Kris sometimes fell into, where he shut out everything else in pursuit of something bigger. But the more Kris pushed away from them, the more distant he became. And she could see the toll it was taking. "Kris, we just want you to be happy," Priya said, her voice soft and filled with love. "We're proud of you, but we also want you to enjoy your childhood. Not every moment has to be about changing the world." But Kris wasn't listening. His mind was elsewhere, on the challenge he had set for himself, on the confrontation with Elon Musk that could define his future. He couldn't afford to waste another moment. "Maybe you're right," Kris muttered, standing up abruptly, "but I can't sit here pretending that nothing matters. I have to go." Before either of his parents could respond, Kris walked out of the dining room, his feet heavy with the weight of his thoughts. He knew they didn't understand. He wasn't just some kid who wanted attention or recognition. He was on a mission that no one else could see yet. Priya and Raj watched him go, a mix of sadness and helplessness in their eyes. They wanted so much for their son, but they didn't know how to reach him when his mind was so far beyond their own. The next day, the air was thick with anticipation. Kris had barely slept, consumed by the events of the previous day. His confrontation with Elon Musk had sent shockwaves through the tech community. News outlets were buzzing about the audacious 10-year-old who had stood up to the billionaire, and the internet was flooded with memes, reactions, and debates. But for Kris, None of that mattered. All that mattered was that he had made a promise to himself. He would prove to Musk and the world that he was more than just a kid with big ideas. He was a visionary, a prodigy on the verge of something extraordinary. It wasn't long before an email arrived in Kris's inbox, sent from none other than Elon Musk's personal assistant. The subject line read, "Invitation for a private discussion with Elon Musk." Kris's heart skipped a beat. He opened the email, and his eyes quickly scanned the message. "Dear Kris, Mr. Musk has seen your comments and is intrigued by your boldness. He would like to meet with you privately to discuss your ideas. Please let us know when you are available to speak." The words seemed to float before him, surreal yet thrilling. Musk wanted to meet him. The opportunity was right in front of him, but Kris knew it wasn't just a chance to meet his idol. It was his chance to show the world that his mind was capable of far more than anyone could imagine. He didn't waste a moment. He grabbed his phone, his fingers flying over the screen as he sent a reply. "I'm available anytime. Please let me know the details." Within minutes, the response came back. "Great. We've arranged a private meeting for you and Mr. Musk in 2 days. Please come prepared with your ideas. We look forward to the discussion." Kris's pulse quickened. This was it, his chance to prove himself. But he couldn't just show up with a few ideas jotted down on a piece of paper. No, he had to come up with something revolutionary, something that would not only impress Musk but challenge him. The next few days were a whirlwind. Kris didn't leave his room. His parents were concerned, but they didn't push him. They knew that once Kris set his sights on something, there was no stopping him. He stayed up late into the night, scribbling equations, drawing designs, and developing his plans for what he would present. The ideas came quickly, too quickly for anyone to keep up with. By the time the day of the meeting arrived, Kris was ready. He had a blueprint for a new form of space travel, one that could drastically reduce the cost and increase the efficiency of interplanetary exploration. It was something that no one, not even Musk himself, had considered before. A combination of quantum mechanics, artificial intelligence, and renewable energy. Kris was confident that this was the future of space. As Kris walked into the meeting room, his heart pounded in his chest. There was Musk, standing by a large window, looking out over the sprawling cityscape. He turned as Kris entered, his expression unreadable. "Well, Kris," Musk said, extending his hand with a smile, "you've got my attention. Let's see what you've got." Kris took a deep breath, shaking Musk's hand firmly. The moment had arrived. There was no turning back now. He opened his notebook and began to explain his concept. His words came quickly, each sentence more confident than the last as he delved into the intricacies of his plan. Musk listened intently, his brow furrowed as he took in every detail. Kris could see the wheels turning in Musk's mind as he processed the idea, evaluating its potential. When Kris finally finished, there was a long silence. Kris held his breath, waiting for the verdict. Musk was quiet for a long time before he spoke. "You've got something here, kid," Musk said slowly. This could change everything. But it's risky. Really risky." Kris nodded, his eyes never leaving Musk's. Risk is part of progress. It's what separates the dreamers from the doers. Musk chuckled, a genuine smile crossing his face. "I like your attitude. I like it a lot. Let's take this further." For the first time, Kris felt the weight of his dream shift from something he alone believed into something that could actually become a reality. The challenge had unfolded, and it had only just begun. Kris couldn't believe what was happening. As he left the meeting with Elon Musk, his heart was still racing. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had truly been seen. Like the world was finally ready to acknowledge his brilliance. Musk had praised his idea, called it bold and innovative, even said it could change the future of space exploration. But as Kris stepped out of the building and into the bright California sunshine, something felt off. The excitement that had filled him only moments earlier began to dissipate, replaced by a growing unease. He had expected Musk to be impressed, but he hadn't anticipated this nagging feeling in his gut. That evening, as he sat in his room going over the notes from the meeting, Kris's phone buzzed. It was a text from his father. "Raj, we need to talk about the meeting. I've been hearing some things. Are you sure about this?" Kris frowned, his fingers hovering over the screen. What was his father talking about? Sure, Musk had been impressed, but this didn't feel like a time for doubt. This was his moment. Still, the message left a lingering sense of discomfort. He dialed his father's number, the call ringing through. "Dad?" Kris asked when Raj picked up. "What do you mean? What's going on?" Raj's voice was cautious, filled with hesitation. "Kris, I've been doing some digging. I've heard that Musk isn't just interested in your idea. Some of the people around him are saying he wants to use it for his own purposes. They're calling it the next big breakthrough, but something feels off to me." Kris paused, his mind racing. Could this really be happening? Was Musk trying to steal his idea? The very thought made his stomach churn. But then again, why would Musk show such interest if he didn't see potential? Maybe his dad was just being paranoid. "Dad, you're overthinking this. Musk is a visionary, and I'm a part of that vision now," Kris said, trying to sound confident, though doubts began to creep in. "I'm not worried. This is exactly what I wanted." Raj sighed on the other end of the line. "I just don't want you to get hurt, son. You're young, and people in this industry can be ruthless. I want to make sure you're prepared for whatever comes next." Kris's jaw clenched. He understood his father's concern, but at the same time, he couldn't let fear hold him back. He was on the brink of something incredible. He had to keep moving forward, no matter the cost. "Thanks, Dad," Kris said, his voice more firm than before. "But I've got this. I'll be fine." The conversation ended, but Kris couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Musk's initial enthusiasm could very well have been genuine, but Raj's warning echoed in his mind. What if Musk was simply seeing Kris as a tool to get what he wanted? What if this was all part of a bigger game? He decided to dig deeper. Over the next few days, Kris scoured the internet for any information he could find about Musk's recent projects and interests. What he uncovered shook him to his core. Rumors swirled that Musk was planning a major new space initiative, one that had the potential to revolutionize the industry. But there was something odd about the timeline. The dates matched up too perfectly with the ideas Kris had presented to him. It was as if Musk had known about Kris's plan before the meeting even took place. It was then that the realization hit Kris like a ton of bricks. Musk hadn't just been impressed with his ideas, he had been waiting for them. Musk was after Kris's innovation, and now he had it. But would Musk let Kris be a part of it? Or would he leave him behind in pursuit of his own vision? The twist was clear. Kris was no longer just a kid with a dream. He was a player in a high-stakes game with one of the world's most powerful men. And if he wasn't careful, he could lose everything. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on Kris's chest as he sat alone in his room, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. His mind raced with the information he had uncovered. Information that now made him question everything he thought he knew about his meeting with Elon Musk. Kris had always admired Musk. To him, Musk was a symbol of innovation, a figure who had shaped the future with his groundbreaking work in space, technology, and electric vehicles. But now, Kris wasn't sure if he had been swept up in Musk's charisma and vision, or if he was just another pawn in a much larger game. He thought back to the words Musk had said during their meeting, "This could change everything." But it's risky, really risky. The excitement had been real, but the more Kris thought about it, the more those words seemed like a veiled warning. Was Musk trying to downplay the potential of Kris's idea to keep it under wraps until he could control it? Kris decided to take matters into his own hands. He could no longer trust that Musk had his best interests at heart. If Kris wanted to protect his idea, he had to know more. He had to understand what Musk was really after. The next day, Kris called an emergency meeting with his closest friends, Maya, his brilliant coding buddy, and Leo, a tech-savvy whiz who had helped Kris build his first robot when they were younger. Both had been part of his inner circle for years, and Kris trusted them like family. "Maya, Leo, I need your help," Kris said, his voice more serious than it had ever been before. "Something's not right. I think Musk is after my ideas, and I don't know what to do about it." Maya, always the analytical one, frowned. "You're saying you think Musk is going to steal your work?" Kris nodded. "I've been looking into it. I found some stuff that makes me think he knew about my idea before I even told him. Like he was waiting for me to show up with it." Leo raised an eyebrow. "That's kind of crazy. I mean, Musk's been involved in a lot of different projects. But you're saying this idea of yours is the one he's really after? Yes, Kris replied. It's not just any idea. It's the future of space travel. My theory about quantum propulsion and renewable energy, that's what Musk's people are working on, and the dates all line up. I think he's been following my progress for a while. Maya looked at Kris thoughtfully. That's disturbing. If he's been tracking you, then it's possible he's been preparing to take your work and make it his own. Leo crossed his arms. But why would he go through all this trouble? What's in it for him to work with a 10-year-old instead of just stealing the idea? Kris was quiet for a moment, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Maybe he needs someone to vouch for the idea, someone to prove it can work. But once it's out there, once the world sees the potential, he'll take control. He always does. Maya leaned forward. So, what's your plan, Kris? Are you going to confront him? Kris shook his head, a sense of resolve settling over him. No, I'm not going to confront him directly, not yet, but I'm going to make sure my work is protected. If Musk wants this idea, he'll have to go through the proper channels. I'm going to make it public. Leo's eyes widened. You're talking about going public with it? But Kris, that could be dangerous. If Musk is really trying to steal it, you might be putting yourself in harm's way. Kris met Leo's gaze with a determined look. I can't sit back and let this happen. I need to control the narrative. I need to show the world that I came up with this idea first. Maya nodded slowly. You're going to need a plan. And a solid one. Kris's fingers drummed on the table, the wheels in his mind turning faster than ever. I'll make a video, a detailed explanation of the idea, all the research, everything. It'll go viral. Musk won't be able to sweep it under the rug if the world is watching. Leo sighed, rubbing his forehead. This is risky, Kris, but I can't say I don't respect the audacity. Maya smiled. This is what you've been building up to, right? Let's make sure it works. With the support of his friends, Kris set his plan into motion. It wasn't just about proving Musk wrong anymore. It was about showing the world the true potential of his ideas and making sure no one could take credit for them but him. The stakes were higher than ever, and Kris knew that every step from here on out would be critical. As he worked late into the night, Kris felt a surge of determination that he hadn't experienced before. He was no longer just the curious prodigy. He was a force to be reckoned with. Kris's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his mind racing as he stared at the screen in front of him. The video was almost ready, his public reveal. This was his moment to take control of his idea and share it with the world, to prove that he was the one who had the vision, the genius, and the courage to bring it to life. He had worked tirelessly with Maya and Leo over the past few days, refining the presentation, ensuring every detail was perfect. Kris wanted to be clear, concise, and above all, compelling. This wasn't just about a breakthrough in space travel. It was about sending a message to Elon Musk, to the world, and to himself. It was about showing that no one, not even the richest and most powerful people, could steal his thunder. After reviewing the final version of the video, Kris nodded. It was time. He clicked the upload button, and as the progress bar filled, he felt a rush of adrenaline. The video would be live soon, and everything would change. His heart pounded as the final seconds ticked by. When the upload was complete, Kris sat back, watching the screen. The world was about to see the full scope of his invention, the quantum propulsion system that could revolutionize space exploration. He'd used his best arguments, his most convincing data, and his most persuasive visuals. The video was a masterclass in innovation and presentation. Kris knew that if people watched it, they wouldn't be able to ignore the magnitude of what he was proposing. Within minutes, the video went viral. The first wave of reactions came from social media, with people sharing the video and commenting in disbelief. A 10-year-old is proposing this? Is this the future of space travel? Could this really be real? The internet exploded with excitement, and it wasn't long before news outlets picked up the story. Kris's name was everywhere. But there was something else, something that made Kris's stomach churn as he watched the reactions unfold. Amidst the praise and excitement, there were whispers. Musk supporters were beginning to flood the comments section, questioning the legitimacy of Kris's ideas. Some even accused him of trying to steal Musk's thunder, of trying to take credit for work that had already been done. Kris's heart sank as he read the comments. Elon Musk is already working on this. This kid is just looking for attention. This is just a knockoff of SpaceX's plans. Great idea, but we all know Musk is already doing this. Stop trying to make it your own. It was clear that Musk's influence was already spreading, and Kris felt the pressure mounting. It wasn't just a battle for the future of space exploration now. It was a battle for credibility. Could Kris stand up to the pressure and prove that his idea was original, that it wasn't a product of Musk's empire? Hours later, Kris received an email that made his heart skip a beat. The subject line read, "Private meeting request. Elon Musk." Kris opened the email, his fingers trembling as he read it. "Dear Kris, I've seen your video. You've certainly caught my attention. I would like to invite you for another private meeting to discuss your ideas further. We can work together to make this happen. I'm looking forward to your response." For a moment, Kris's mind went blank. This was it. Musk was reaching out again. But was this a genuine offer to collaborate, or was it his way of controlling the narrative? Kris glanced at the comments, at the growing storm of opinions swirling around his name. He knew that the world was watching. They were waiting for his next move. And this time, Kris wasn't just fighting for recognition. He was fighting to keep his voice in a conversation that had the power to shape the future. He quickly replied, "I'd like to meet and discuss this further. However, I want to make it clear that I am not interested in just being a cog in a machine. If we work together, my ideas will be my own. Let's see where this can go." As soon as he hit send, Kris felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. Was he making the right decision? Could he trust Musk, or was this just another way to take advantage of him? As the hours passed, the world continued to buzz about Kris's revelation. News outlets were calling him a genius prodigy and the future of space exploration. The pressure mounted, but so did his resolve. If Musk wanted to work with him, he would have to respect Kris's vision, and Kris would make sure of that. The stage was set, and Kris knew that the next meeting with Musk would be the most important of his life. It wasn't just about ideas anymore. It was about power, control, and who would define the future. Kris had never felt more nervous in his life. He sat in the waiting area of one of Musk's private offices in Silicon Valley, his fingers tapping restlessly on the armrest of the chair. The meeting with Elon Musk had been scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp, and now, as the clock ticked toward 11, Kris was starting to question every decision he had made. His mind raced through the possibilities. Would Musk try to manipulate him into giving up control of his idea? Would this be another moment where Kris's brilliance was recognized? Or was it the moment where his dream slipped away into the hands of one of the world's most powerful men? His phone buzzed. It was a text from Maya. "Stay calm. You've got this. Remember, this is your idea." Kris smiled, reading the message, but his nerves didn't settle. The door to the office opened, and a woman in a sleek suit stepped out. She flashed a polite smile and gestured for him to come in. "Mr. Aurora, Mr. Musk is ready for you." Kris nodded, taking a deep breath. This was it. He walked into the office, where Musk was already seated at a long, polished table, staring at a tablet in his hands. He looked up as Kris entered, and the faintest of smiles tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Kris," Musk said, rising from his chair and offering a handshake. "Glad we could meet again. I must say, I was impressed by your video." Bold move. Kris shook Musk's hand, feeling the power of the grip. There was no denying that Musk was charismatic. His presence filled the room in a way that commanded respect. But Kris wasn't there to be intimidated. He had his own goals, his own vision, and he wasn't about to let anyone take that from him. "Thank you, Mr. Musk," Kris replied, his voice steady. "I wanted to make sure my ideas were heard. They're too important to be kept hidden." Musk smiled again, his eyes glinting with what Kris could only describe as interest. "I agree. You've got something special here, Kris. Your work could change the future of space travel, renewable energy, everything. That's why I want to make you an offer." Kris's heart skipped a beat. The moment had arrived. "I'm listening," Kris said, folding his arms and leaning forward, trying to keep his composure. Musk leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "I've got the resources to make your idea a reality, Kris. We've been working on something similar at SpaceX, but your approach is unique. Together, we could make history." I want you to come on board, be part of the team, and help us take this to the next level. Kris felt a sharp pang in his chest. This was the moment where he had to decide whether to trust Musk or stand firm and retain control of his idea. He had expected an offer like this, but the weight of it was still overwhelming. Musk was offering him the world, access to resources, power, and the ability to change the course of history. But at what cost? I appreciate the offer, Mr. Musk, Kris said, his voice more measured now. But I'm not just looking for a partnership where I'm another cog in the machine. This is my idea, and I need to make sure that it stays true to my vision. I'm not interested in just joining a company. I want to keep my independence. Musk's smile faltered slightly, but only for a moment. I understand your concern, Kris, but you have to understand, what you're talking about is bigger than you or me. We have the capability to make it happen, but it requires the power of a company like SpaceX to bring it to life. Do you really want to go it alone? Think about the possibilities. You'll have the freedom to pursue your ideas, but with the backing of an organization that can take them further than you ever could on your own. Kris's mind spun as Musk continued to speak, laying out the potential benefits. But in the back of his mind, Kris remembered what his father had told him. People can be ruthless. They'll say anything to get what they want. Kris had already learned that the world wasn't just about ideas. It was about control. If he gave up his independence, he might never get it back. I've thought about it, Mr. Musk, Kris said, his voice firm, and I've decided that I want to make this on my own terms. I'm not interested in handing over control of my work. I've spent years building this, and I believe it can make a difference. But I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me. Musk looked at him for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, with a slow nod, he leaned forward, his tone becoming more serious. You're a rare one, Kris. Most people would jump at the chance to have the power and resources of a company like SpaceX behind them. But you're right about one thing. It's your idea, and you should protect it. Kris met Musk's gaze, feeling the weight of the moment. He could see the respect in Musk's eyes, but there was something else there too, something calculating. Kris wasn't sure what Musk was really thinking, but he knew he had to remain vigilant. I'm glad we understand each other, Musk said after a pause. But remember, Kris, the world isn't as simple as just having a great idea. It's about execution. If you're not careful, you could get lost in the noise. Kris didn't flinch. I'll take my chances, Mr. Musk. The silence between them was thick, but Kris stood his ground. He wasn't going to let Musk control his future. The conversation ended on a professional note, but Kris knew that this was just the beginning. As he left the office and stepped into the bright sunlight, Kris felt a rush of relief. He had made his choice, and while the future was uncertain, one thing was clear. He was in control of his destiny. The days following Kris's confrontation with Elon Musk felt like an endless roller coaster of emotions. While the initial rush of standing his ground had given him a sense of pride, Kris couldn't ignore the tension that was building in the background. Musk's offer had been enticing, and despite his resolve, Kris couldn't help but wonder if he had made a mistake. The phone calls, the emails, and the messages from journalists, investors, and even other tech giants kept flooding in. People wanted to know what came next. They wanted to know if Kris was going to accept Musk's invitation or continue his quest alone. In the midst of it all, Kris had one goal. He wanted to prove that he could achieve greatness, not by relying on someone else's empire, but by creating his own. But reality was beginning to sink in. With the media attention came the pressure. It wasn't just about his invention anymore. It was about his image. Kris was becoming a symbol of hope for young innovators, a beacon of potential in a world full of skepticism about youth, about the future, and about the power of fresh ideas. And yet, every step he took seemed to come with a new set of challenges. One evening, after a long day of meetings and interviews, Kris sat in his room, staring at the blueprint for his quantum propulsion system. His mind wandered, trying to focus on the intricate calculations and designs, but the doubt crept in again. Could he really do this on his own? Was he ready for the weight of everything that was about to happen? The door creaked open, and Maya stepped into the room. She had a knowing look in her eyes, one that told Kris she understood the storm swirling inside his mind. Hey, you've been quiet for a while, Maya said softly, sitting down next to him. What's going on? Kris sighed. running a hand through his hair. I keep thinking about Musk's offer. What if I made the wrong choice, Maya? What if I'm not ready for all of this? It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to execute it, especially with everyone watching. I don't know if I can do this alone. Maya reached out and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Kris, you don't have to do this alone. You've got people who believe in you, people who are ready to help you. You've already proven that you have what it takes. Look at everything you've done so far. You're a genius, and you've got the heart to back it up. That's what's going to make the difference. Kris looked up at her, his expression softening. I don't want to let anyone down. I don't want to be one of those stories of wasted potential. I want to be the person who makes something real, who changes the world. But I'm scared, Maya. Maya smiled gently. I think everyone's scared, Kris. But the ones who make it are the ones who take the leap, even when they're scared. You've already started something huge, and there's no turning back. But that doesn't mean you're alone in it. Kris nodded slowly. Maya's words sank in, and for the first time in days, he felt a spark of clarity. The road ahead would be tough, but he wasn't going to let fear define him. The challenges were all part of the journey. It wasn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It was about taking the first step, even when you weren't sure where it would lead. The next day, Kris sat down with Leo and Maya to discuss their next move. They reviewed their plans, considering both the potential benefits and risks of partnering with Musk, and whether it was possible to retain some independence while working with him. It was clear that the stakes were higher than ever. We've got one chance to get this right, Leo said, his voice steady but laced with concern. The world is watching. If we play it too safe, we might miss our window. But if we push too hard, we risk everything. Kris thought about it for a moment. He had always believed in the power of innovation and progress, but now, more than ever, he knew that it wasn't just about being the smartest or most talented. It was about timing, trust, and the ability to adapt to the unexpected. I'm not backing down, Kris said finally, his voice resolute, but we have to be smart. I've got an idea, something that could help us move forward without sacrificing everything we've worked for. We'll reach out to Musk again, but this time, it will be on our terms. Maya and Leo exchanged looks, both nodding in agreement. They knew that Kris was right. They didn't have to follow the traditional path. They could forge their own. As the hours ticked by and the world continued to watch, Kris knew that whatever happened next would define him. This was no longer just about an idea. It was about creating something that would change the world. And Kris was ready to take the next step. The next few days were a blur. Kris had made his decision, and now it was time to execute. He couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. The world was watching, and every moment of indecision felt like a ticking clock. His plan was bold, perhaps even reckless, but it was the only way forward if he wanted to stay true to his vision. After several long strategy meetings with Maya and Leo, Kris drafted a message to Elon Musk. The email was succinct but powerful. I appreciate your offer, but I believe there's another way we can work together. Here are my terms. Kris's counteroffer was clear. He wanted a partnership with SpaceX, but one where he retained full ownership of his intellectual property and a say in how his ideas were developed. It was risky. If Musk refused, Kris knew he might lose his chance at working with one of the most influential companies in the world. But he was willing to take that risk. It wasn't about selling out. It was about collaboration on his own terms. He sent the email, hit send, and then leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. Maya and Leo were sitting nearby, waiting for his next move. The tension was palpable. I hope he responds, Maya said quietly. You've got guts, Kris, but do you really think he'll go for it? Kris shrugged, trying to keep his cool. I don't know, but if he doesn't, we'll find another way. I've come this far, and I'm not about to give up now. The hours stretched into the evening, and Kris tried to keep his mind occupied by working on his designs, but he couldn't shake the feeling of impending change. The weight of the decision he had made lingered over him like a storm cloud, ready to break at any moment. Just after dinner, Kris's phone buzzed. It was an email notification. He didn't even need to look at the sender to know who it was. His heart raced as he opened the email from Elon Musk. I've looked over your proposal, and I appreciate the thought you've put into it. You're right. Your ideas are something special, and I believe they have the potential to change the game. I'm willing to work with you under the terms you've outlined. But here's the catch. While I respect your independence, we're going to need some guarantees that you'll stay fully committed to this project and that it remains a priority for you. We can't afford any distractions. Let's meet again to discuss the details and make sure we're aligned. Regards, Elon Musk. Kris stared at the screen, disbelief washing over him. This was more than he could have hoped for. Musk was willing to accept his terms. It wasn't an outright win, but it was a massive step in the right direction. Musk had agreed to collaborate, but the conditions were clear. Kris had to commit fully to the project and make it a priority. Kris took a deep breath. This was a turning point. He hadn't just won a battle. He had secured the foundation for his future. But it wasn't going to be easy. He would need to prove that he could handle the responsibility of the partnership, that he was worthy of Musk's trust. Well, that's it, Kris said, a grin spreading across his face. We've got the green light. Maya and Leo exchanged a look of disbelief, and then they both broke into smiles. You did it, Kris, Leo said, shaking his head. You actually did it. Kris felt a surge of pride, but it was tempered by the realization that the hardest part was just beginning. Musk was a visionary, but he was also a businessman. Kris had to make sure he didn't lose sight of what made his idea special in the process. Now comes the real work, Kris said, standing up and stretching. We've got a lot to figure out. A few days later, Kris, Maya, and Leo found themselves boarding a private jet, heading back to SpaceX headquarters. The weight of the situation settled over Kris once more. He was no longer a kid with a dream. He was part of something much bigger now. As the jet soared through the sky, Kris gazed out of the window, his mind racing. The partnership with SpaceX could provide the resources he needed to make his vision a reality, but it also meant giving up some of the control he had fiercely guarded. He would need to tread carefully. Musk was a brilliant, driven man, but Kris knew that not everything about him aligned with his own values. Maya nudged him gently. You all right? Kris nodded. Yeah, just thinking about everything that's ahead. We're about to enter a whole new world, Maya. I've got to make sure I don't lose myself in it. Maya smiled. You won't. Just stay true to who you are. You've already proven you can do this. Leo, overhearing, gave a thumbs up. And if anyone can make it work, it's you. Kris's chest swelled with gratitude. They were more than just colleagues. They were his foundation. Without them, he wouldn't have made it this far. As the jet descended toward the SpaceX headquarters, Kris took a deep breath. He was about to step into a room with Elon Musk again. This time, as a partner, there was no going back now. The private jet touched down on the runway at SpaceX headquarters, and Kris felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as the wheels hit the tarmac. This was it, his first face-to-face meeting with Elon Musk since sending the counteroffer. He had no idea what the meeting would entail, but he knew that it was the next step toward turning his dreams into reality. As Kris, Maya, and Leo disembarked, they were escorted into a sleek, modern building that seemed to embody the future. The walls were lined with monitors showing live data feeds from SpaceX missions, and the air hummed with the quiet buzz of innovation. They were led into a spacious conference room, where a long table gleamed under the bright lights. At the far end of the room, sitting in a chair with his usual calm demeanor, was Elon Musk. He stood up as they entered, his sharp eyes studying Kris, as if measuring him with each step. Kris, Musk said with a slight smile, extending a hand. It's good to finally meet you in person. Kris took the handshake, feeling the firm grip that Musk was known for. It was a power move, a way of asserting dominance, but Kris didn't flinch. He had been through too much already to let nerves get the best of him. Thanks for meeting with me, Kris said, sitting down. I appreciate the opportunity. Musk nodded, his expression neutral. Let's get down to business then. I've read your proposal, and I'm willing to proceed. But I need to understand more about what you want from this partnership. It's not just about technology, it's about vision. What's your long-term plan? Kris took a deep breath. This was the moment where he had to make his vision clear. There was no room for hesitation. My long-term plan is to change the world, not just with technology, but with the way people think about innovation and progress. I want to create a new frontier for humanity, one that isn't bound by old ideas or limitations. I know that's ambitious, but that's what SpaceX represents to me. It's not just about rockets or space travel. It's about pushing humanity forward. And I want to be part of that. Musk leaned back in his chair, clearly intrigued. I like what I'm hearing, Kris, but it's going to take more than just ideas. Execution is everything. I need to know that you can deliver, that you won't back down when things get tough. What's going to set you apart from the rest? Kris looked Musk in the eye, unflinching. I've always believed that the difference between success and failure is persistence. I may be young, but I'm not afraid to put in the work. I'm willing to fail over and over again until I get it right. I've been doing that my whole life. Musk smiled slightly. That's the spirit I like to see. But let's be clear. I'm not here to hold your hand. You're going to have to prove yourself every step of the way. We'll help you, but you're the one who has to drive this forward. Kris nodded, feeling the weight of Musk's words. This wasn't just an opportunity. It was a challenge, one that would push him to his limits. What's the next step? Kris asked. We'll start with resources, Musk said, his tone shifting to business mode. You'll have access to the best minds at SpaceX. Engineers, scientists, and innovators who are working on the cutting edge of space technology. But you need to prove that you can handle the responsibility that comes with it. We'll set milestones and goals, and if you hit them, we'll go further. Kris took a moment to absorb what Musk was saying. This was more than just a business partnership. It was a test, and one that he couldn't afford to fail. I'm ready, Kris said finally, his voice steady. I'll do whatever it takes to prove myself. Musk studied him for a moment, his gaze piercing. Finally, he nodded. All right, let's get to work then. The meeting was over, but Kris's mind was racing. Musk had agreed to work with him, but it wasn't going to be easy. This was just the beginning of what would likely be the hardest journey of his life. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure was mounting. As Kris, Maya, and Leo walked out of the conference room, Maya turned to him. So, what do you think? Do you feel ready? Kris took a deep breath, feeling both the excitement and the weight of what lay ahead. I think it's time to show everyone what we're really capable of. Leo slapped Kris on the back. You've got this, man. You've already proven that you're not afraid to take risks. Now it's time to prove that you can turn all of this into something real. Kris smiled. It wasn't going to be easy, but he had no intention of backing down. He was about to embark on a journey that would change not only his life but the future of technology itself. And he was ready to face whatever challenges came his way. The first week at SpaceX was a whirlwind of meetings, brainstorming sessions, and technical discussions. Kris had barely had time to breathe, let alone process everything that had happened. He had a team of brilliant engineers and scientists at his disposal, but now the real work was beginning. Musk's expectations loomed over him, a constant reminder that failure was not an option. Kris's primary task was clear: develop a revolutionary propulsion system that could make space travel more efficient and sustainable. The idea had been floating around in his head for years, but now it was time to turn it into something tangible. He wasn't alone in this. There were plenty of experts who could help, but he had to lead the project to prove that he had the vision and capability to make it a reality. His first challenge came when he had to present his initial concept to the SpaceX board. The room was filled with some of the brightest minds in aerospace technology, and the pressure was unbearable. Kris could feel the weight of their gazes as they studied him, waiting for him to impress them. As he stepped up to the podium, Kris cleared his throat. The projector behind him flickered to life, displaying his first set of designs. The diagrams were simple, almost rudimentary, but the concept was bold. A propulsion system that could revolutionize the efficiency of rockets by using a hybrid method that combined traditional fuel with a new form of ion propulsion. It was theoretical, but Kris believed it had potential. This is my vision, Kris said, his voice steady despite the nerves gnawing at him. A system that combines the best of both worlds: reliable, conventional fuel for takeoff and a cutting-edge ion propulsion system for travel through space. It's faster, more efficient, and more cost-effective. He paused, watching the faces of the board members. Some were intrigued, others skeptical. One engineer raised his hand. Kris, this is ambitious, the engineer said, his voice doubtful. But have you considered the limitations of ion propulsion for long-distance travel? The technology is still in its infancy. How do you plan to overcome its current inefficiencies? Kris nodded, expecting the question. He had prepared for this. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. The ion propulsion system isn't perfect yet, but by combining it with a reliable traditional fuel source, we can bridge the gap. The hybrid approach isn't about being perfect right now. It's about taking a step forward towards something bigger. And the potential for scalability is enormous. Another board member chimed in. Scalability is all well and good, but what about the cost? This project isn't cheap. We need to ensure that it's financially viable before we start pouring resources into it. Kris took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define his credibility. I understand the concern, but the cost of innovation is always high. The first rockets were expensive, but they paved the way for cheaper, more efficient missions. I'm confident that with the right resources, we can overcome these financial hurdles. The future of space travel isn't about sticking to what we know. It's about pushing the boundaries, even when the risks are high. The room fell silent as the board members exchanged glances. Kris could feel the tension. He had said everything he needed to say, but now it was up to them to decide whether they were willing to take the leap of faith with him. Finally, Musk spoke. His voice was calm but authoritative, the kind of voice that carried weight. Kris is right, he said, his gaze fixed on the room. Innovation doesn't come without risk. I'm willing to take a chance on this. We'll give you the resources you need to test this system. But make no mistake, this is a high-stakes project. If it doesn't work, there will be consequences. Kris's heart raced as the board nodded in agreement. It was a go. The pressure was on, but this was the moment he had been waiting for. The real work was about to begin. Over the next few weeks, Kris threw himself into the project with everything he had. He worked late nights, poring over data, refining his designs, and overseeing the team as they built the first prototypes. The challenge wasn't just technical. It was about managing expectations, dealing with setbacks, and keeping his vision intact. One afternoon, Kris was in the lab, staring at a simulation on his computer screen. The results were troubling. The ion propulsion system, in its current form, wasn't producing the expected results. The hybrid approach was still too volatile, and the system was too inefficient to be practical for long-distance travel. Frustration bubbled up inside him, but he refused to give up. He couldn't afford to fail, not now. Maya and Leo walked in, sensing the tension in the air. Hey, Kris, how's it going? Maya asked, her voice casual, but her eyes scanning the room for any signs of distress. Kris didn't answer immediately. He ran a hand through his hair, staring at the screen. It's not going well. The system isn't working the way I thought it would. The efficiency isn't where it needs to be. Leo stepped up to the screen, studying the data. It's not the end of the world, Kris. You've encountered a roadblock. It happens. The important thing is that you don't let it stop you. Kris nodded, but it wasn't enough. I know, but if we don't fix this, we're done. The whole project will fall apart. Maya gave him a reassuring smile. You're a genius, Kris. You'll find a way. You always do. Kris took a deep breath. Thanks, both of you. I know I can't do this alone, but I've got to get it right. That night, as Kris lay in bed, his mind was racing. He couldn't shake the thought that this might be his last chance. If the project failed, he could lose everything. The partnership with SpaceX, the trust Musk had placed in him, everything. But then, something clicked. An idea, a small but crucial modification to the propulsion system, came to him in the middle of the night. It was a risky move, but it just might work. He couldn't sleep until he had sketched out the plan and run the numbers. This was it, his next big breakthrough. The following days were a blur of activity. Kris's team had been working tirelessly to refine the new concept he'd come up with the night before. It was risky, an untested modification to the propulsion system that could either propel the project forward or crash it into failure. But Kris believed in it with every ounce of his being. He stood in front of the control panel, watching the team hook up the final components to the test chamber. The air was thick with anticipation, but also with tension. Every engineer and scientist knew how much was riding on this moment. If the test failed, it wouldn't just be a personal loss for Kris, it would be a major setback for SpaceX, and Musk's faith in him would be in question. This is it, Kris, Maya said, her voice filled with quiet encouragement. You've got this. Kris didn't respond immediately. He was too focused on the task ahead. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the final parameters on the screen. The modifications were set. The propulsion system was ready for its first real test. Leo, standing beside Maya, gave Kris a thumbs up. Ready when you are, man. Kris took a deep breath. He looked over the test data one last time before pressing the button. The chamber whirred to life, and the simulation began. Minutes felt like hours. The room was silent except for the soft hum of machinery and the faint click of keys as the team monitored every input. Kris's mind raced, reviewing every possible outcome, every possible failure. What if it didn't work? What if it all came crashing down? But then, the readings started to change. Slowly at first, an increase in efficiency, a reduction in energy consumption. Kris's heart skipped a beat. The system was holding steady. The numbers weren't just stable. They were improving. It's working, one of the engineers exclaimed. Kris's pulse quickened. The propulsion system wasn't just functioning. It was exceeding expectations. The hybrid design, which had once seemed like a long shot, was showing real promise. Maya's eyes widened as she leaned in closer. Kris, this is huge. We're actually doing it. The data on the screens kept improving. The propulsion system was achieving results that no one thought possible for a hybrid model. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was a major step forward. For the first time, Kris allowed himself a smile. It was small, but it was enough to let the weight of the moment sink in. We did it, Kris said, his voice barely above a whisper. But in that quiet exclamation, he knew that the project had just taken a giant leap toward success. SpaceX was about to get its first real glimpse of the future. As the test concluded and the chamber powered down, Kris looked around at his team. They were all watching him, waiting for his reaction. He turned to them, his eyes bright with excitement. This is just the beginning, Kris said, his voice steady but full of hope. Now, we take this to the next level. The team erupted into cheers and applause. The breakthrough had happened. Kris had done it. The propulsion system had been proven to work, and the implications were enormous. The hybrid propulsion model could revolutionize space travel. It was the first step toward making long-distance, sustainable space exploration a reality. That evening, Kris sat alone in his office at SpaceX, staring at the test data on his screen. The numbers glowed back at him, still almost too surreal to believe. His mind raced as he thought about the long road ahead. There was still a lot of work to be done, and the project was far from perfect. But they had a working prototype now, something that Musk and the board had thought was impossible just a few months ago. He heard a knock on the door, and Maya entered, holding a small box in her hands. She set it down on his desk. Thought you might need a little celebration, she said with a smile. Kris raised an eyebrow as he opened the box. Inside was a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. Maya poured them both a drink, and they clinked glasses in the soft glow of the office lights. To the first of many breakthroughs, Kris said, feeling the weight of the journey ahead. The next step was going to be even harder, but for the first time in a long while, he felt confident. He wasn't alone in this. His team, his friends, and even Musk had his back. They drank in silence for a moment before Maya spoke again. So, what's next? Kris looked at the champagne, thinking. We keep pushing. We refine the system, improve the efficiency, and start preparing for the next phase of testing. But most importantly, we prove that this wasn't just luck. We need to show the world that we can do what they said was impossible. Maya nodded, her eyes shining with admiration. And I know you will, Kris. You've already proved it. Kris smiled, feeling the weight of the responsibility, but also the promise of what lay ahead. The future was closer than ever, and he was ready to face whatever challenges came next. This was only the beginning. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours of the successful test, Kris's breakthrough in hybrid propulsion had taken over headlines across the globe. Space enthusiasts, scientists, and tech giants all weighed in, praising the innovative design that could potentially change the future of space travel. The excitement was palpable, but so was the skepticism. Kris knew this was only the beginning. The real test wasn't just about making a working system. It was about proving that it could stand up to the world's scrutiny. It wasn't long before Kris was thrust into the media spotlight. Interviews, Press conferences and endless phone calls flooded his schedule. The story was everywhere, and Kris found himself at the center of it all. To many, he was a prodigy. At just 10 years old, he had achieved something that many thought impossible. But to Kris, the attention was overwhelming. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this level of visibility. He just wanted to keep working, to push the project further. One afternoon, after a long day of interviews, Kris was sitting in his office at SpaceX, scrolling through the news on his tablet. He paused when he saw a headline that caught his eye. Is Kris Aurora's hybrid propulsion system too good to be true? The article was written by a prominent aerospace journalist, and while it acknowledged the breakthrough, it also raised serious concerns about the feasibility of Kris's design. Kris frowned as he read the article. The journalist had a point. There were still many hurdles to overcome, and the propulsion system had only been tested in a controlled environment. There were no guarantees that it would work as effectively under real-world conditions. But still, the words stung. The last thing Kris wanted was for people to think that he was just a kid who got lucky. He had worked too hard for that. Maya walked in, sensing his frustration. Hey, what's up? You look like you just read a bad review. Kris showed her the article. It's not just a bad review. It's the kind of skepticism I expected. People think this is too good to be true. They're doubting whether it can actually work in real missions. Maya read the article over his shoulder, then sighed. It's normal. They're always going to be skeptical of something new. But you've already proven it works in testing. The next step is to show the world that this isn't just a fluke. Kris nodded. I know. I just hate the idea of people thinking I can't pull it off. I've got to make this work. I can't afford to fail. Maya placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You won't. You've already done something incredible. Now it's time to prove the doubters wrong. A few days later, Kris found himself standing in front of an even bigger challenge. His first public demonstration. SpaceX had decided to showcase the propulsion system in front of a live audience. Scientists, engineers, investors, and the media would all be there. The stakes were higher than ever. This was no longer just about a successful test. It was about demonstrating to the world that the propulsion system could be scaled and adapted for real missions. Kris had been preparing for this moment for weeks. He had run through every possible scenario in his mind. But as the day approached, the pressure only grew. He stood on the stage at the SpaceX headquarters, watching the audience filter in. Musk stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on Kris. He wasn't just the leader of SpaceX now. He was a mentor, and the expectations were enormous. Kris's team was ready. Maya and Leo were by his side, offering quiet support as they checked the final preparations. The propulsion system was set up in the testing chamber, and everything was aligned for the big moment. Maya leaned in and whispered, "You've got this, Kris. Just remember, you're not doing this alone." Kris gave her a small nod. He took a deep breath and stepped forward to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. What you're about to witness is the culmination of months of hard work, innovation, and dedication. This propulsion system, which I believe could change the future of space travel, is not just a dream. It's becoming a reality. The room fell silent as the test chamber powered up. The audience watched intently, some skeptical, others excited. Kris clicked a button, initiating the propulsion system's first real-world test. The room buzzed with anticipation as the hybrid propulsion system powered up, its hum filling the air. Kris's heart raced as he waited for the data to come in. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the machines and the soft tapping of keyboards as his team monitored the results. Then, the numbers started to change. The system was working. The hybrid model was performing even better than expected, maintaining stability and showing greater efficiency with each passing second. Kris allowed himself a brief smile, but he kept his focus on the data. This was the moment he'd been working toward. It wasn't just about the test itself. It was about showing the world that this was the future of space travel. After a few tense minutes, the test concluded successfully. The audience erupted into applause, but Kris didn't let himself get distracted. He knew the journey wasn't over. This was just the beginning. There were still questions to answer, challenges to overcome, and improvements to be made. But this demonstration had proved one thing beyond a doubt. The hybrid propulsion system had the potential to change everything. As Kris stepped off the stage, he was met with a wave of reporters. The questions came fast and furious about the system's potential, its scalability, and whether SpaceX was truly ready to invest in it long-term. Kris answered each one with calm precision, but inside, his mind was already racing ahead. He knew this was only the first step in a much larger journey. Later that evening, Musk pulled him aside. "You did well today, Kris, but this is just the beginning. People will be watching, waiting for you to slip up. It's up to you to prove them wrong." Kris nodded. "I will. I won't let them down." The excitement from the demonstration quickly turned into something more intense. Kris's breakthrough was no longer just a technical achievement. It had become a global sensation. Everyone had an opinion on his propulsion system, and the eyes of the world were now on him. For some, it was a story of triumph. For others, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. The pressure began to weigh heavily on Kris. What had been a private project between him and his team was now a public spectacle. Critics who had once dismissed him as a child prodigy now stood ready to tear his work apart. Every move he made was scrutinized, and every test was a potential disaster waiting to happen. Kris woke up one morning to an inbox full of emails from SpaceX's investors. Some were congratulatory, but many were filled with skepticism. They wanted results. They wanted proof that the hybrid propulsion system could not only work in ideal conditions, but could be scaled up for real missions. The media frenzy didn't help. It seemed that every outlet wanted a piece of Kris: television interviews, podcasts, live discussions. His phone buzzed incessantly with requests for appearances. At school, he was constantly approached by classmates, some asking for autographs, others just staring at him in awe. It was a strange feeling to be both revered and feared. Even his teachers seemed to treat him differently, unsure of how to approach a 10-year-old genius now in the spotlight. As the days passed, Kris felt himself growing more distant from his normal life. He had been so consumed by the work and the expectations that he hardly saw his family anymore. His mother, Priya, had started calling him more often, reminding him to take care of himself. She was worried about him. "Kris, you need to take breaks," she said one evening over the phone. "You've been working nonstop. This can't be good for you." "I know, Mom," Kris replied, his voice tired. "I'm just trying to make sure everything goes right." Priya sighed. "I understand, but remember, this isn't just about you. You've got a whole team behind you. Lean on them, Kris. You don't have to carry all this alone." Kris knew she was right, but it didn't change how he felt. Every time he looked at the media or at the work still left to do, the weight of it all pressed on his shoulders. He didn't want to let anyone down. Not his team, not Musk, and certainly not his family. At SpaceX, the pressure was even more palpable. The next round of testing was fast approaching. Kris's team had made significant progress in refining the propulsion system, but there were still countless variables to test and perfect. Every time they made a breakthrough, it seemed like there was another challenge waiting. One day, as Kris sat in his office, reviewing test data, Maya walked in with a worried look on her face. "Kris," she began, sitting across from him, "there's something we need to talk about. We're getting pressure from the board to accelerate the timeline. They want a fully functional prototype in the next 3 months. Kris frowned. 3 months? That's impossible. We need more time to refine the system. I know, Maya replied, her voice tense, but they're getting impatient. They're pushing us hard. Kris ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling up. They don't understand. This isn't something you can rush. If we cut corners now, it could ruin everything. I get it, Maya said, but they don't care. They see dollar signs, Kris. They want a product, not a process. Kris sat back in his chair, trying to process it all. The pressure from the board was becoming unbearable. They didn't understand the intricacies of the project. They saw the potential for profit, but didn't grasp how fragile the hybrid propulsion system was. If they rushed it, everything could fall apart. That night, Kris couldn't sleep. He kept turning the situation over in his mind, wondering if there was a way to meet the board's demands without sacrificing the integrity of the project. He knew he had to find a balance between the fast-paced world of business and the painstaking work required for innovation. The next morning, he went into the office early. Maya and Leo were already there, reviewing test simulations. Kris took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision that loomed over him. He had to talk to Musk. Walking into Musk's office felt different now. The walls, once a backdrop to quiet conversations, now felt like a stage where everything he said could change the course of the project. Musk sat behind his desk, his eyes glued to a set of numbers on the screen in front of him. "Kris," Musk said, looking up when he entered. "What's on your mind?" "I'm concerned," Kris replied. "The board wants us to speed up the timeline, but I don't think we're ready. If we rush this, it could all fall apart. We need more time to test, to refine. We're talking about something that could change the future of space travel, and I don't want to jeopardize that for the sake of hitting a deadline." Musk leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled as he thought. "I understand your concerns, Kris, but the reality is that the pressure is on. Investors are getting restless. The world is watching us. We can't afford to let that slip away." Kris nodded. "I know, but we can't afford to let the technology slip away either." For a long moment, Musk said nothing. Then, he leaned forward, his gaze steady. "I've been in your shoes before, Kris. When you're on the verge of changing the world, the pressure can feel suffocating. But you have to make a choice. Either you push through it and prove them wrong, or you back down. The choice is yours. Just remember, this isn't just about getting it done. It's about getting it done right." Kris absorbed his words. He knew Musk was right. There would always be pressure, always be doubts. But if he didn't push through now, he might never get another chance. That evening, Kris gathered his team. "We're going to keep pushing," he said, his voice firm. "We won't cut corners. But we'll find a way to work smarter, not harder. We'll make it work." Maya and Leo nodded, their determination matching his. Together, they would face whatever came next. The tension in the SpaceX labs was palpable. Kris, Maya, Leo, and the rest of the team had worked tirelessly for weeks, refining every aspect of the propulsion system. With the deadline for the fully functional prototype looming closer, the pressure to meet the investors' demands intensified. Every day felt like a race against time. Every test had to be flawless. Despite his earlier resolve to push through, Kris couldn't shake the sense that something was off. It wasn't just the mounting pressure. It was the nagging feeling that they were missing something. The propulsion system was performing well, but there were still variables that hadn't been fully explored. And the thought of rushing the process, cutting corners just to meet a deadline, kept gnawing at him. One evening, as Kris sat in his office reviewing the latest test data, Maya walked in with a grim expression. She placed a tablet in front of him, showing the results of the most recent simulation. "We've hit a snag," she said quietly. Kris frowned, scanning the data. The propulsion system had failed to stabilize at higher speeds. "What does this mean?" Maya sighed. "It means that we're running into issues that we didn't anticipate. The system works well under controlled conditions, but when we push it beyond a certain threshold, it becomes unstable. We need to go back to the drawing board." Kris felt a wave of frustration wash over him. "We don't have time for that. We're already behind schedule. If we don't fix this now, we'll miss the deadline." Maya's expression softened. "I know, but we can't afford to make the same mistake we made before, rushing things and hoping it will work. We need to make sure this system is foolproof, or it could be a disaster." Kris ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. He had promised Musk and the board that he could deliver. He had promised his team that he wouldn't let them down. But now, the reality of the situation hit him hard. What if the system wasn't ready? What if it couldn't be made safe in time? "I can't fail," Kris muttered, more to himself than to Maya. "I can't let everyone down." Maya's voice was firm. "You won't. We're all in this together. We just need to figure out the solution." Kris stared at the tablet for a long moment, then stood up abruptly. "I need to talk to Musk." Later that evening, Kris found himself once again standing in front of Elon Musk, this time in his private office. Musk was leaning over a set of plans for the next SpaceX mission, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Kris," Musk said, glancing up as Kris entered. "What's the update?" "We've hit a problem," Kris said, his voice tight. "The propulsion system works in controlled environments, but at higher speeds, it becomes unstable. We need more time to figure out how to fix it." Musk didn't respond immediately, his eyes narrowing as he processed the information. After a long pause, he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. This is exactly why we've been pushing for faster results. We need to be ready, and we can't afford to wait forever. But I get it, Kris. If it's not right, it's not right. Kris felt a slight sense of relief. I don't want to rush this. We can't afford to make a mistake that could ruin everything. I need to make sure it's perfect before we go forward. Musk studied him for a moment, then gave a small nod. You're right, but you have to understand the bigger picture. People are expecting a revolution. We can't keep them waiting forever. There's a fine line between perfection and progress, Kris, and I think you're standing on it. Kris nodded, his mind whirling. He appreciated Musk's understanding, but it didn't make the decision any easier. He had a choice to make. He could continue pushing the boundaries, taking the time to fix the system, or he could risk it all and move forward, hoping that they could work out the kinks along the way. The next few days were a blur. Kris and his team worked around the clock, analyzing every inch of the propulsion system. They revisited every simulation, every piece of data, looking for patterns and solutions. The hours stretched late into the night, and Kris began to feel the exhaustion settle in. The weight of the project was becoming unbearable, but amidst the stress, he began to notice something. He was no longer working alone. His team, led by Maya and Leo, was with him every step of the way. They were all in this together. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they discovered the flaw. The issue wasn't with the core technology. It was with the fuel mix that powered the system at higher speeds. Once they adjusted the composition and recalibrated the system to account for this change, the propulsion system stabilized. Kris felt a surge of relief. They had done it. They had found the solution. The next day, Kris stood before his team, the prototype ready for another round of testing. The room was filled with anticipation, but this time, there was a sense of cautious optimism. The hybrid propulsion system was about to face its most challenging test yet. Kris's hands shook slightly as he initiated the sequence. This was it, the moment that would determine if all their hard work would pay off. He watched the readout closely, holding his breath as the system powered up. The seconds stretched on, feeling like an eternity. Then, slowly, the numbers began to stabilize. The system was working. It was holding steady at the highest speeds they had tested it at. Kris exhaled in relief, his heart racing. They had done it. Later that day, Kris and his team gathered to present their results to Musk and the board. The room was filled with anxious faces, all waiting for the confirmation that the propulsion system had passed its final test. Kris stood at the front, his voice steady but filled with emotion. The system is ready. We've solved the issues, and it's now fully operational. We've done everything we can to make sure it's safe and reliable. The room erupted into applause. Musk stood, his eyes gleaming with approval. Congratulations, Kris. This is what innovation looks like. Kris's triumph was no longer a quiet, behind-the-scenes victory. The successful test of the hybrid propulsion system reverberated across the globe. News outlets from every corner of the world picked up the story. His name, once just known to a select few in the scientific community, was now a household name. People marveled at the 10-year-old genius who had made history, and the world watched as SpaceX prepared for the next phase of its groundbreaking mission. In the days following the successful test, Kris received messages from all kinds of people. Famous scientists, aspiring engineers, and curious students all sent him notes of congratulations. Some wanted to meet him, others asked for advice. Social media was flooded with hashtags like #KrisAurora, #FutureOfSpace, and #SpaceXRevolution. But while the world celebrated, Kris could hardly find a moment to breathe. The pressure to deliver was far from over. There were still so many steps left before the hybrid propulsion system could be used for a manned mission. The investors wanted results. The world expected progress. And Kris, though proud of what he had achieved, found himself overwhelmed by the weight of the responsibility. In the midst of all the excitement, Kris took a rare opportunity to relax one evening. After a long day of meetings and planning, he sat in his living room, a rare moment of solitude. His parents, Priya and Raj, were busy with their work, and Kris was left alone with his thoughts. He stared at his phone, scrolling through the endless stream of messages and notifications. It was a lot to take in. Just a few months ago, he had been working on the project in a small, quiet lab, surrounded by only a few trusted friends and mentors. Now, the entire world seemed to be watching his every move. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Musk. "Kris, I need to talk to you. Meet me at the SpaceX headquarters tomorrow morning." Kris's heart skipped a beat. He had barely processed the news of his success, and now he was being called in for another meeting with Musk. He knew it was important, but part of him couldn't help but feel anxious. What was next? What new challenge awaited him? The next morning, Kris arrived at the SpaceX headquarters, his mind racing with questions. As he walked into Musk's office, he found Musk seated at his desk, reviewing some documents. The room was calm, but there was a sense of urgency in the air. "Good to see you, Kris," Musk said, looking up and offering a small smile. "Please, take a seat." Kris sat down across from him, his palms sweaty. "What's going on, Mr. Musk?" Musk didn't waste time with small talk. "We've received some offers, big offers, from various government agencies and private investors around the world. Everyone wants a piece of the hybrid propulsion system. There's a lot of money involved, Kris, and a lot of pressure." Kris's heart raced. The idea of the propulsion system being in the hands of others was both exciting and terrifying. He had worked so hard on it, and now it was about to be commercialized in ways he had never imagined. "I'm glad the system is getting the attention it deserves," Kris said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But it feels a bit overwhelming. I didn't expect this kind of reaction." Musk nodded. "I get it. It's a big leap. But here's the thing. SpaceX can't move forward without your vision. The investors want results, but they also want control. The question is, are you ready to step into a bigger role? We need someone with your talent to lead this project forward. And I think you're the right person for the job." Kris stared at Musk, processing the words. The weight of the responsibility seemed heavier than ever. Lead the project? Take control of something that had the potential to change the world? Kris wasn't sure if he was ready for that kind of responsibility. I don't know if I can," Kris said quietly. "This has all been so much already. I don't want to mess it up." Musk leaned forward, his tone serious but reassuring. "You're not in this alone, Kris. You have a team, and you have people who believe in you. This isn't just about building a rocket. It's about changing the future, and you've already proven you're capable of that." Kris thought about the countless hours he had spent on this project, the late nights and the sleepless mornings. He thought about the people who had supported him along the way: Maya, Leo, his parents, and even Musk himself. They had all believed in him, even when the road ahead seemed uncertain. With a deep breath, Kris looked up at Musk. "Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Kris took on a more prominent role in the development of the propulsion system. He worked closely with Musk and the team, leading meetings and helping to refine the technology for its commercial use. As the world began to take notice, SpaceX made the announcement. The hybrid propulsion system was going to be the cornerstone of a new era in space exploration. Soon after, Kris found himself traveling around the world to meet with potential investors, discussing how the propulsion system could revolutionize space travel. The constant travel, the meetings, the high-profile events, it was all part of the process, but it was beginning to take its toll. Kris couldn't help but feel like he was walking a fine line between success and burnout. There was no going back now. He had made his choice to step into the spotlight, and now the world was watching, waiting to see what he would do next. Back at home, Priya noticed the change in her son. He had grown quieter, more introspective. The pressure was starting to show, and she worried about him. "Kris," she said one evening, sitting next to him on the couch, "are you okay? You don't seem like yourself lately." Kris looked at her, his face weary. "I'm just trying to keep up, Mom. Everyone's counting on me, and I don't want to let them down." Priya placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to carry the world on your shoulders, Kris. You've already done so much. Don't forget to take care of yourself, too." Kris nodded, but deep down, he knew that the journey ahead would require even more than what he had already given. Kris stood in front of a massive crowd, the bright lights of the conference hall blinding him. His palms were clammy, and his heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just another public event. It was the event. The moment when the entire world would see what he had been working on. The hybrid propulsion system was finally going to be presented to the world as the future of space exploration, and the expectations couldn't be higher. He had worked hard to get here, but as the minutes ticked by, he couldn't shake the growing sense of pressure. It wasn't the audience that worried him. He had faced crowds before, but the weight of what was riding on his presentation. Everyone, from investors to government officials to the media, was waiting for him to deliver. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Musk. "You've got this, Kris. Show them what you're made of." He forced a smile, but the words didn't fully reassure him. He appreciated Musk's support, but Kris couldn't help but feel the burden of the moment. Everyone was counting on him to be the face of this revolutionary breakthrough in space technology. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized this wasn't just about the propulsion system anymore. This was about his future, and whether he could live up to the immense expectations that had been placed on his young shoulders. The countdown to his presentation began. 5 minutes to go, the event coordinator called out. Kris took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. He visualized the years of work that had led to this moment, countless simulations, endless hours of testing, the late-night brainstorming sessions with Maya and Leo. He could hear their voices in his mind, encouraging him to keep pushing, to keep going even when things seemed impossible. He wasn't alone in this. He opened his eyes, steadying himself. It was time. The stage lights dimmed as the host announced his name. Kris walked onto the stage, his footsteps echoing through the auditorium. The sea of faces before him blurred together as he focused on the task at hand. As he reached the podium, he took a moment to gather himself before addressing the crowd. "Good evening," Kris began, his voice clear and confident despite the nervousness swirling inside him. "Thank you for being here today. What I'm about to present to you is not just the culmination of years of hard work. It's a vision for the future, one that will change the way we look at space travel forever." He gestured toward the massive screen behind him, which displayed a 3D rendering of the hybrid propulsion system. This propulsion system is unlike anything we've seen before. It's not just faster or more efficient, it's safer, more sustainable, and it has the potential to make interplanetary travel a reality. It's the next step in space exploration, and it's ready to take us further than we've ever gone before. The audience was rapt with attention. Kris continued, describing the technical aspects of the system, the breakthroughs they had achieved, and how it would change the future of human space travel. He had practiced this speech countless times, and now it flowed naturally from his lips. His words were steady, each sentence carefully measured, designed to reassure and inspire confidence in the crowd. As he spoke, he could see the faces of the investors, the officials, the engineers in the crowd, all of them hanging on his every word. It was a moment of validation, but also one of intense pressure. He had to convince them that he was the right person to lead this revolution, that his team and he could deliver on the promises they had made. Then, as the presentation reached its climax, Kris hit a snag. The system was designed to demonstrate its capabilities in a live simulation, and it had worked perfectly during rehearsals. But when he initiated the sequence for the real demonstration, something went wrong. The screen flickered, and the numbers on the data display began to spike erratically. Kris's heart skipped a beat. He tried to remain calm, but his mind raced. The system was glitching. Why was it malfunctioning now, of all times? The countdown on the timer ticked down faster than he could process, and the tension in the room was palpable. He glanced at the technicians off stage, hoping they had an answer. But their frantic motions only added to his anxiety. The system wasn't responding. For a moment, Kris thought he could hear the collective breath of the audience, holding its expectation in that suspended moment. It felt like an eternity. Kris's hand hovered over the control panel. His mind went blank for an instant, but then he remembered the advice he had heard countless times. When in doubt, go back to basics. With a calmness he didn't feel, Kris quickly recalibrated the system using the backup commands. He could hear the hum of the machines as they shifted gears, as the hybrid propulsion system slowly powered up again. He watched the screen closely, his fingers trembling slightly. And then, the numbers stabilized. A wave of relief washed over him as the system resumed its normal operations, and the room erupted into applause. Kris let out a quiet sigh, his heart still racing. The glitch had been a scare, but it was over now. The propulsion system had demonstrated its true potential, and the audience had witnessed it firsthand. Despite the glitch, he had delivered. Later that evening, Kris sat in a private room backstage, alone with his thoughts. The adrenaline was beginning to wear off, and the full weight of what had just happened hit him. He had faced one of the most intense moments of his life, and he had handled it, barely, but he had handled it nonetheless. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Maya. "You did it, Kris. We all did. I'm so proud of you." He smiled, knowing that he hadn't done it alone. He had his team, his family, behind him every step of the way. But as he reflected on the experience, he couldn't help but think about the next step. The propulsion system had proven itself, but now the real work began. The pressure was only going to grow from here. And as the world began to take notice of his work, Kris knew that the journey ahead would only become more intense. The days following Kris's live demonstration were a blur. He was inundated with interviews, meetings, and a never-ending stream of requests. The world had officially taken notice, and Kris, despite his young age, was now the face of the next era of space exploration. But even amidst the chaos, something inside him felt different. For the first time in a long while, Kris took a moment to stop and reflect. He was no longer just a young genius tinkering with ideas in his bedroom. The propulsion system was no longer a dream. It was a reality, a tangible thing that had the potential to change the way humanity viewed space travel forever. But with this newfound responsibility came a weight that Kris hadn't fully anticipated. It wasn't just about being celebrated for his ideas anymore. The pressure to innovate, to deliver on the promises made, was ever present. He had seen how quickly things could go wrong, like the glitch during his presentation, and he knew that any misstep now could derail everything. One afternoon, Kris sat alone in his room, staring out the window. The city below seemed distant, almost insignificant, compared to the vastness of the universe he was now working to explore. Space, once just a dream for him, was now an achievable frontier. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Kris worked tirelessly alongside the SpaceX team, brainstorming solutions, running simulations, and refining the plans for the interplanetary mission. The media followed every move, eager to report on every new development. Kris had become the face of innovation, the prodigy who was destined to reshape the future of space exploration. But as the work continued, Kris found himself becoming more and more consumed by it. He had always been passionate about space, but the relentless schedule was beginning to take a toll on him. He hadn't spent time with his friends or family in weeks, and the quiet moments he used to enjoy were becoming fewer and farther between. One evening, Maya sent him a message. "Hey, Kris, it's been a while. How about we meet up? I miss our old brainstorming sessions." Kris smiled at the message. Maya had always been a constant in his life, a reminder of simpler times. He hadn't realized how much he missed her until now. He quickly replied, "Let's do it. I could use a break." Later that week, Kris and Maya met at a local cafe. It was a small, quiet place. Nothing like the high-tech conference rooms Kris had been spending so much time in lately. As they sat across from each other, Maya smiled, but Kris could see the concern in her eyes. "You've been working non-stop, haven't you?" she asked, sipping her drink. Kris nodded. "I have to. We're on the verge of something huge. But it's been tough. The pressure is a lot more than I expected." Maya leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "You don't have to do it alone, you know. You've got people who care about you, who are willing to help." Kris stared at her for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had been so focused on the mission, on the future, that he had forgotten about the people who had always been there for him. The friends, the mentors, his family. He couldn't do this without them. "Thanks, Maya," he said softly. "I needed to hear that." They talked for hours, reminiscing about old times and sharing their hopes for the future. It was a moment of peace in the midst of the chaos, a reminder of what truly mattered. As Kris left the cafe that evening, he felt a renewed sense of clarity. The path ahead was still filled with uncertainty, but he no longer felt alone. With the support of his team, his friends, and his family, He knew he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. And as the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, Kris realized that the true adventure was only just beginning. The world had already begun to take notice of Kris Aurora. His name was now synonymous with innovation, and his propulsion system was being hailed as the key to unlocking interplanetary travel. Yet, for Kris, the applause and the accolades felt distant compared to the burning questions that constantly lingered in his mind. What's next? How can they push the boundaries even further? It wasn't enough for him to simply make history. He wanted to shape the future. The pressure to not only meet expectations but exceed them was more intense than ever before. Space exploration wasn't just about reaching new destinations anymore. It was about the possibilities that lay beyond them. Kris had already achieved what most could only dream of, but he knew the real challenge was still ahead. The hybrid propulsion system had taken them to the edge of the stars. But the question on everyone's mind was, could it take them even farther? One morning, Kris sat at the round table with Musk and the SpaceX team, strategizing the next phase of the interplanetary mission. Musk, as usual, had his usual aura of calm determination, but Kris could sense his excitement. This wasn't just a project anymore. It was a race to the stars. And everyone at the table knew it. "We're talking about the next frontier, Kris," Musk said, leaning forward. "Mars is just the beginning. We need to start looking at other moons, other planets. The propulsion system has given us a chance to make this leap, but it's going to take everything we have. We're aiming for an entirely new world. Are you ready for this?" Kris nodded, the weight of Musk's words settling over him. The idea of exploring moons outside of the Earth-Mars system had once seemed impossible, but now, with his propulsion system at the heart of it, it felt like something tangible, something within reach. But that's when the reality of the challenge hit. These were no longer simple theoretical missions. The interplanetary travel would need to account for years of travel, extreme conditions, and new technologies that would need to be developed from scratch. It would require coordination between scientists, engineers, and visionaries from around the world. Musk turned his gaze to Kris, his expression serious. "You're the genius behind this propulsion system, Kris. We need you to help us chart the way forward. This is your opportunity to break boundaries. The world is counting on you to make the impossible possible." As the weeks went by, Kris worked around the clock, often staying late into the night, refining the propulsion system and planning the next steps of the mission. The ideas he had once considered theoretical were now coming to life. Every breakthrough, every new calculation, only pushed him further into the future. But as he worked tirelessly, Kris couldn't help but feel a growing sense of isolation. His life had become consumed by the project. He missed the days when things were simpler, when he could enjoy a peaceful afternoon with his friends or take a walk outside without the weight of the world on his shoulders. Maya noticed his distance. They hadn't spent much time together since their cafe meeting, and when they did talk, it was usually about the mission. She knew how much Kris was sacrificing, but she also knew that he needed balance. One evening, Maya called him. "Kris, we need to talk." The next day, they met at a park near Kris's house, away from the constant buzz of work and the pressures of space exploration. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the city. For the first time in weeks, Kris felt like he could breathe. Maya sat across from him, her gaze soft but direct. "I've been watching you, Kris. I know how much this means to you, but you're burning yourself out. You're trying to change the world, but you can't do it if you're not taking care of yourself." Kris looked away, unsure of how to respond. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate what Maya was saying. It was just that he couldn't stop thinking about the next step. The future of space exploration depended on him. I don't know if I can stop," he admitted, his voice quieter than usual. "If I take a break now, I'll fall behind. The world's moving faster than ever, and I don't want to be the one to hold everything back." Maya reached across the table, placing her hand gently on his. "I'm not saying you have to stop, Kris. I'm saying you need to find balance. The future isn't just about the work you do. It's about the people who help you get there. And you've got people who love and support you. Don't forget that." Kris let her words sink in. It wasn't just about achieving the impossible. It was about sharing that journey with the people he cared about. He had to remember that even in the pursuit of greatness, The people around him were just as important. I've been so focused on the mission, I've neglected everything else, Kris said, his voice filled with guilt. I haven't been there for you or for anyone. Maya smiled gently. It's not too late, Kris. You don't have to do it alone. Let us help you. And you'll see. When you let others in, everything will become clearer. Kris took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. Maybe it was time to trust the people who believed in him. Maybe it was time to lean on them and allow the mission to become a shared journey. The next day, Kris made a decision. He reached out to Maya, Leo, and even Musk, inviting them to a meeting to discuss not just the propulsion system, but the broader mission ahead. He realized that this wouldn't be just one person's success. It would be the success of a team, a family of individuals working together toward a common goal. As Kris looked out across the horizon, he understood something crucial. Space was vast, but it wasn't as isolating as it seemed. It was full of opportunities, and those opportunities weren't just for individuals. They were for communities, for partnerships. The real frontier, Kris realized, wasn't just in the stars. It was in the connections made along the way. The decision to open up to his team and lean on the support of his friends had been a turning point for Kris. He no longer felt like he was carrying the weight of the future alone. In fact, the more he shared his vision, the clearer the path ahead became. With each meeting, brainstorming session, and late-night conversation, Kris began to realize that the future of space exploration wasn't about individual achievement. It was about collective action. Yet, as the team began to coalesce and refine their plans for the interplanetary mission, the challenges only grew. Kris had always been accustomed to problem-solving on his own, but this was different. Now, he was dealing with a scale that far surpassed anything he'd ever imagined. Their work wasn't confined to the bounds of Earth's atmosphere anymore. It was about exploring the unknown, about reaching out into the stars, hoping to touch the edges of human possibility. The goal was clear. The hybrid propulsion system, which had already exceeded expectations, needed to be adapted to allow a spacecraft to travel not just to Mars, but beyond. They were targeting the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, the outer reaches of the solar system. And while Kris had designed a propulsion system that could bend the laws of physics, the reality of applying it to deep space travel was something else entirely. One evening, as Kris reviewed the plans for the spacecraft, he found himself standing on the balcony of his apartment, staring out at the city below. The stars seemed to twinkle brighter than ever, but his thoughts were clouded with uncertainty. He had come so far, but the deeper into the unknown they ventured, the more obstacles seemed to appear. Could they really make it to the outer planets? Could they really break the barriers that separated humanity from the stars? As if sensing his anxiety, Leo, his closest friend and one of the lead engineers, stepped out onto the balcony with him. "You've been quiet lately," Leo said, his tone light but filled with an undercurrent of concern. "What's on your mind?" Kris turned to him, the weight of his thoughts evident in his eyes. "I'm scared, Leo. This mission, it feels so much bigger than anything we've done before. What if we fail? What if we can't make it to Jupiter, to Saturn? What if the propulsion system can't handle the journey?" Leo placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I get it. This is uncharted territory for all of us. But Kris, look at how far we've come. We're not the same people we were when we first started. And no matter what happens, we're going to do everything we can to make it happen. You don't have to be afraid. Not now." Kris looked at Leo, his friend's unwavering confidence reminding him of what they had already accomplished. They had taken risks before and come out stronger. They were pioneers, explorers, and the unknown was what drove them forward. "Thanks, Leo," Kris said, his voice steadier now. I don't want to let anyone down. We've got one shot at this, and it has to work." Leo nodded, smiling. "It will work, Kris. We've got you. And together, there's nothing we can't do." Over the next few weeks, Kris and his team worked tirelessly, modifying the propulsion system for deep space travel. Every test, every simulation, brought them closer to their goal. Yet the mission was still fraught with uncertainty. New variables continued to emerge, unknown cosmic phenomena, radiation levels in the outer solar system, and the unforeseen risks of extended space travel. In the midst of all this, Kris's thoughts often turned to Elon Musk. Musk's ambition was legendary, his vision for humanity's future among the stars a driving force behind the mission. Yet, Kris had learned to look beyond the headlines and to understand the man behind them. Musk was not just a billionaire businessman. He was a risk-taker, a visionary who had, time and time again, gone against the odds. But Kris also realized that the risks they were about to take would be unlike anything Musk had ever encountered. One evening, Kris received a message from Musk that seemed simple at first. It's time to talk about the mission timeline. We need to set a date for the first test flight. The team convened in the command center, a sleek room filled with monitors displaying everything from propulsion data to the mission blueprint. Musk stood at the head of the table, flanked by Kris and the rest of the engineering team. "We're all in this together," Musk began, his voice low but filled with purpose. "But we need to set a clear target. The public is watching, investors are waiting, and most importantly, we're on the verge of making history. The first test flight has to happen soon, within the next 6 months." Kris felt the weight of those words. 6 months. It was a tight timeline, especially considering the unknown still ahead. He glanced at his team, who seemed equally aware of the monumental task ahead. "But we can do this," Musk continued, his eyes scanning the room. "You've all seen the data. You've all contributed to this groundbreaking technology. Now, it's time to prove it. Kris, I'm relying on you to make sure we're ready." Kris took a deep breath. This was the moment. This was the challenge he had been waiting for. He nodded, his resolve firming up. "We're ready. I promise you that." The next several weeks were a blur of preparation, testing, recalibrating, and refining every aspect of the propulsion system. Kris didn't just want the test flight to be successful. He wanted it to be a statement to the world that humanity was ready to take the next step. There were moments of doubt, but each time, Kris found himself drawing strength from his team, from the people who believed in him. The day of the first test flight arrived. The spacecraft, now fully equipped with the modified propulsion system, stood on the launch pad, ready to venture beyond Earth's orbit. The team gathered, watching as the countdown began. Musk stood beside Kris, his eyes fixed on the spacecraft. "This is it," Kris said softly, his voice almost lost in the hum of the engines. Musk nodded, his usual confidence unwavering. "This is just the beginning." As the countdown reached its final seconds, Kris's heart raced. They were on the edge of the unknown, poised to make a leap that would change everything. And as the rocket ignited and soared into the sky, Kris knew one thing for certain. They were no longer bound by the limitations of Earth. They had broken the boundaries. The roar of the rocket's engines reverberated through the ground, shaking the Earth beneath them as the spacecraft launched into the sky. Kris stood among the team, his eyes locked onto the growing, in the sky, a symbol of everything they had worked for. This was the moment. The test flight was more than just a technical experiment. It was a declaration that humanity was ready to explore the uncharted vastness of space. The countdown had reached 0, and now there was nothing left to do but watch and wait. Kris felt a rush of exhilaration, but beneath it, a growing knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. The mission had gone through countless simulations, rigorous tests, and tireless calculations, but there was always the risk that something could go wrong. He turned to Musk, who had been unusually quiet during the launch. There was a glint in his eyes, a mixture of pride and anticipation, but also an unspoken tension that Kris could sense. "Do you think it will work?" Kris asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Musk's gaze never wavered from the spacecraft as it ascended into the atmosphere. "I don't think it's about whether it will work, Kris. It's about whether we're ready for what comes next." Kris nodded, understanding the depth of Musk's words. Space wasn't just a destination, it was a frontier. And every new frontier came with risks. The spacecraft reached the edge of the atmosphere, the sky turning dark as it moved closer to the infinite expanse of space. The propulsion system, which had already proven its capabilities on Earth, now faced its greatest test. Could it withstand the vast unknowns of space? Hours passed, and the team watched the monitors, waiting for the first signs of success. The data was being transmitted in real time, but every minute felt like an eternity. Kris's heart raced with every update, each one bringing him closer to the truth of whether they had truly broken through. Finally, a signal came through, a green light on the screen. The spacecraft had reached a key milestone. It had crossed into the uppermost layers of Earth's atmosphere. But they weren't celebrating just yet. The real test was just beginning. The propulsion system would now need to operate in the vacuum of space, where it had never been tested before. Kris's pulse quickened as the spacecraft began its first course correction, maneuvering itself through the vacuum of space using the hybrid propulsion system. The systems were stable. The engines were firing smoothly. The spacecraft was on track to enter the outer orbit, a journey that would bring it closer to the limits of the solar system. But then, a new alert flashed on the screen. The propulsion system was holding up better than expected, but a new challenge had emerged. The spacecraft was encountering a high-energy particle storm in deep space, an unpredictable phenomenon that was not only dangerous but could potentially damage the propulsion systems. Kris's mind raced as he watched the incoming data. The particle storm was much stronger than anything they had prepared for. This was the kind of problem that no simulation had accounted for. The spacecraft's protective shield was holding, but for how long? "We're going to need to make adjustments," Kris said, his voice sharp. "We can't afford to take any chances." Leo, the lead engineer, worked quickly at his console. "We'll need to reroute the power to the shielding and make adjustments to the navigation controls. It's going to take a few minutes to recalibrate." Kris didn't hesitate. He knew that time was critical. "We don't have that long," he said, his mind running through every possible solution. "Can we activate the emergency protocol for the propulsion system?" Musk's voice cut through the tension. "It's risky, but if anyone can do it, it's you. We're all counting on you, Kris." Kris's hands moved quickly, accessing the system's emergency protocols. He was running the calculations in his mind as he typed commands into the console. Every decision felt like it could be the difference between success and failure. He adjusted the energy allocation, rerouted power to shield the propulsion system from the incoming particle storm, and initiated the backup systems to stabilize the spacecraft's trajectory. It was a delicate balance. Too much power redirected to the shielding, and they risked losing control of the spacecraft. Too little, and the propulsion system could be fried. Come on, Kris muttered to himself, watching the status bar slowly move toward green. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the data stabilized. The particle storm had passed, and the spacecraft was on course again. The propulsion system, though strained, had held up. Kris let out a long breath, his heart still racing. They had made it through the first major obstacle. But as he looked around at the team, he knew this was just the beginning. They had faced the first challenge, but many more awaited them as they journeyed deeper into the unknown. There was no way to predict what they would encounter next. Musk walked over to Kris, his expression one of quiet admiration. "You did it," he said. "That was incredible." Kris nodded, but his focus never wavered from the task at hand. "It's not over yet. We've just reached the edge of what we know. The real work is still ahead." As the spacecraft continued on its path into the outer reaches of space, Kris couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. They were no longer just pushing the boundaries of technology. They were pushing the boundaries of humanity itself. And with every step, every challenge they overcame, Kris knew they were getting closer to the future they had always dreamed of. But even as the spacecraft hurtled forward, Kris knew one thing for certain. The unknown was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous. Yet, it was also full of infinite possibilities. And they were ready to face it. The deep silence of space was deafening, but to Kris, it was the sound of possibility. As the spacecraft continued its journey toward the outer reaches of the solar system, he couldn't help but feel a profound sense of awe. Here they were, hurtling through the infinite, on the cusp of exploring territory that no human had ever ventured into before. But space had a way of humbling even the most confident explorers. The team had made it through the particle storm, but the deeper they traveled, the more they realized how little they understood the vast expanse of space. Every piece of data that came back from the spacecraft was a revelation, both a confirmation of their success and a reminder of the immense challenges still ahead. For Kris, it was a strange mix of exhilaration and fear. There was no turning back now. This was uncharted territory, not just physically, but scientifically. Their mission was about more than just reaching new frontiers. It was about understanding the forces that govern the universe. The deep space environment wasn't the sterile, predictable world of Earth-based laboratories. The data they were receiving from the spacecraft's sensors was filled with anomalies. Tiny gravitational shifts, sudden bursts of radiation, and minute but persistent fluctuations in the propulsion system kept Kris on edge. The unknowns were adding up, and every test felt like a high-stakes gamble. As the spacecraft crossed into the orbit of Jupiter, the enormity of their mission struck Kris once again. The gas giant loomed ahead, its swirling storms and turbulent atmosphere a constant reminder of the raw power that existed beyond Earth. But the spacecraft was steady. The propulsion system, despite the challenges, had adapted well to the extreme conditions of deep space. Yet, as they neared the moon Europa, one of Jupiter's most intriguing moons, the team's excitement was tempered with caution. Europa was a world of ice and water, a place that scientists had long suspected could harbor life beneath its frozen surface. It was an ideal location for Kris and his team to conduct tests of the spacecraft's advanced systems, tests that would push the limits of what was possible. Europa's surface temperature is minus 160 degrees Celsius, Leo noted, his voice tinged with uncertainty. We're going to need to make sure the spacecraft's hull remains intact while we approach. The radiation from Jupiter's magnetosphere could be catastrophic if we don't shield it properly. Kris studied the data. Everything seemed in order, but there was always a risk when dealing with the unknown. We'll proceed carefully. Make sure the heat shields are at optimal capacity. We need to protect the system at all costs. The team worked seamlessly, their trust in each other evident in their synchronized efforts. Yet, even with everything in place, Kris couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. As much as they had prepared, as much as the team had innovated, they were still mere humans in the face of a universe that had existed long before they did. As the spacecraft entered the gravitational influence of Europa, Kris watched as the moon's icy surface loomed closer on the screen. He could almost feel the weight of the decision they were about to make. This wasn't just a test of technology. It was a test of humanity's courage, curiosity, and resolve. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the command center. Kris's heart skipped a beat. "What's happening?" he demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. A new data stream appeared on the monitors. A massive spike in radiation from Europa's surface was heading directly toward them, triggered by an unexpected geomagnetic disturbance from Jupiter itself. The spacecraft's shields were holding for now, but the incoming radiation could breach their defenses if it reached critical levels. "We're facing a solar flare," Leo said, his voice tinged with panic. "It's stronger than we anticipated. The shields might not hold." Kris's mind raced. They needed to act fast. Reinforce the shields. Redirect power to the magnetic field systems. "We've faced worse on Earth. This is just another challenge." As the team scrambled to reroute power and reinforce the spacecraft's protective systems, Kris couldn't help but feel a wave of doubt. They had trained for moments like this, but nothing could truly prepare them for the unpredictable nature of deep space. The stakes were higher than ever. The radiation levels surged, and the spacecraft's instruments began to fail, one by one. The hum of the engines faltered, and Kris's hands flew over the controls, trying to stabilize the ship. A burst of static came through the communications system. "Elon," Kris muttered, his voice tight with strain. "We need backup. We can't hold this much longer." Musk's voice came through, steady but laced with tension. "Kris, I trust you. I know you can make it through this, but you need to keep the systems online. You're the one who's pushed this technology to its limits. Now, prove it." Kris took a deep breath. He was no longer just leading a team. He was leading humanity's first real exploration of the outer solar system. The weight of that responsibility was immense, but it also gave him the strength to push through. "Redirect all power to the engine," Kris ordered. "We're not turning back now." With all the power they could muster, the spacecraft's propulsion system roared back to life, pushing forward through the storm of radiation. The shields held, and the spacecraft's course remained true. Europa's surface was now just a distant, icy blur in the distance, but the team had made it through, together. As the spacecraft emerged from the radiation storm, Kris let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. The tension in the command center began to dissipate, But there was no time to celebrate. They had proven the system could withstand the harshest environments in the solar system, but there were still many unknowns ahead. Kris's eyes turned toward the viewports, where the stars stretched out endlessly, a reminder of just how far humanity had come and how far they still had to go. They were on the edge of the unknown, but they were ready. The stars glimmered like diamonds scattered across a black velvet canvas, the vastness of space stretching endlessly before them. As the spacecraft drifted deeper into the outer solar system, Kris's sense of awe mingled with a palpable sense of isolation. The closer they got to the outermost edges of their known universe, the more the weight of their mission settled on his shoulders. They were venturing into territory where no human had ever gone, and every step forward felt like a step into the unknown. Their success at Europa had brought them a significant victory, but Kris knew that the greatest challenges still lay ahead. The spacecraft was holding up well, but the journey was far from over. The propulsion system, though revolutionary, had yet to be tested beyond the outer limits of the solar system. There were too many uncertainties, and the crew had to remain vigilant every moment. Kris was standing in the observation deck, staring out into the abyss. The immensity of space, with its boundless reaches, was humbling. He had always dreamed of exploring the stars, but now that he was here, he could feel the overwhelming sense of fragility that came with it. Everything, the spacecraft, the propulsion system, even the crew, was a tiny speck in the universe. Yet, this tiny speck was pushing forward, seeking answers that could shape the future of humanity. Elon, Kris said, turning to face Musk, who had just entered the observation deck. What's next? Musk, as always, was calm and collected, but his eyes betrayed a hint of uncertainty. Next is Neptune. It's the farthest we've ever been. Beyond that lies the Kuiper Belt, a region of space that's still largely unexplored. We have to gather data, test the systems, and see if the propulsion holds up under extreme conditions. The thought of Neptune, the blue giant, loomed large. Kris had read about it in textbooks and seen images from distant probes, but nothing compared to the reality of approaching it in person. Neptune was a world of extremes, with its wild storms and powerful winds. It was a harsh and unforgiving environment, one that could easily overwhelm an unprepared mission. We're prepared, right? Kris asked, his voice tinged with doubt. Musk nodded, though there was an edge of concern in his expression. We're as prepared as we can be. But nothing can prepare us for what we might encounter once we pass Neptune and enter the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt, an area of icy objects and dwarf planets that existed beyond the orbit of Neptune, was uncharted. It was an area of great scientific interest, but also one filled with unknown dangers. The spacecraft would need to rely on Kris's hybrid propulsion system, which had never been tested under such conditions. The pressures, the gravitational anomalies, and the unpredictable nature of the belt itself made it a risky proposition. But it was a risk Kris and the team were willing to take. They had come this far. They couldn't turn back now. As the spacecraft approached Neptune, the temperature plummeted, and the crew began to feel the intensity of the journey. The spacecraft's heat shields were working overtime, and the propulsion system was under constant strain. Kris monitored the systems closely, his mind racing through the calculations and backup plans in case something went wrong. Then, just as they passed Neptune and entered the edge of the Kuiper Belt, disaster struck. A sudden shift in the spacecraft's trajectory caused the sensors to go haywire. The ship lurched forward, its momentum carrying it toward an unknown object, a rogue asteroid, smaller than the spacecraft but still large enough to cause catastrophic damage. "Brace for impact," Kris shouted. The spacecraft swerved, but not quickly enough. The asteroid collided with the spacecraft's outer hull, sending a violent shockwave through the ship. Sparks flew from the console, and the lights flickered. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the alarms blared. "Damage report," Kris barked. Leo and the engineering team scrambled to assess the situation. The impact had damaged the outer shielding and caused a temporary loss of power to the propulsion system. The ship was drifting uncontrollably, caught in the gravitational pull of the Kuiper Belt. "Shields are down to 30%, Leo reported. "We're losing power to the main systems. The propulsion is offline." Krish's mind raced as he processed the information. They were stranded in the Kuiper Belt, surrounded by debris and obstacles, with limited power and no propulsion to get them back on course. "Can we fix it?" Musk asked, his voice calm but filled with urgency. Kris looked at the damaged systems. The task ahead seemed almost impossible, but giving up wasn't an option. "We'll need to reroute power to the engines, stabilize the ship, and then repair the hull. It's going to be a race against time." Hours passed, and the crew worked relentlessly. Kris coordinated with Leo and the engineers to repair the damaged systems, while the rest of the team monitored the ship's remaining functions. It was a painstaking process, and every moment was crucial. As they worked, Kris couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. They were so far from Earth, so far from home, that the distance between them and the world they knew felt unfathomable. The vast emptiness of space seemed to press in on them, reminding them of just how fragile their mission was. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the systems began to stabilize. The propulsion system came back online, and the spacecraft's shields were reactivated. Kris let out a sigh of relief, but there was no time to celebrate. They were still in the Kuiper Belt, and there was still a long way to go before they could begin their return journey. "We're not out of the woods yet," Kris said, his voice steady but with an undertone of exhaustion. "We need to move quickly before anything else happens." As the spacecraft continued its journey through the Kuiper Belt, Kris reflected on the journey they had taken. They had survived a direct hit, managed to repair the spacecraft, and kept moving forward. But they were no longer just explorers. They were pioneers, charting a course into the darkest, most uncharted parts of the universe. And with each new challenge, they proved that humanity could face the unknown and conquer it, one step at a time. The spacecraft drifted through the vast expanse of the Kuiper Belt, the edge of the known universe stretching out ahead. Kris stared at the screen, watching the small, icy objects floating in the emptiness, each a relic from the earliest days of the solar system. It was a surreal sight, one that only a handful of people had ever laid eyes on. But to Kris, it felt like a reminder of how far humanity had come and how much farther there was to go. The damage from the asteroid had left its mark, but the team had worked tirelessly to restore the spacecraft systems. The repairs had been difficult, but they had succeeded, and now they were headed back toward the warmth and safety of the inner solar system. Earth was still months away, but the knowledge that they were on their way home filled Kris with a sense of relief. The journey through the Kuiper Belt had been perilous, but they had made it through. Together, they had faced the unimaginable, dangerous radiation storms, asteroid collisions, and the crushing isolation of deep space. They had come out stronger, more resilient, and more determined than ever before. "We did it," Leo said, his voice tinged with exhaustion but filled with pride. "We're finally on the way back." Kris nodded, though the weight of the mission still hung heavily on his shoulders. They had pushed the boundaries of human exploration, but there was more work to be done. Their journey had only just begun, and the discoveries they had made would fuel the next wave of space exploration. But for now, they could rest, knowing they had accomplished something extraordinary. The communications link with Earth was established once again, and Kris could hear Elon Musk's voice crackling through the static. "Kris, I just wanted to congratulate you and your team. What you've done is nothing short of revolutionary. You've shown the world that humanity has the power to explore the stars, to conquer the unknown." Kris's heart swelled with pride. "Thank you, Elon. But this isn't just my achievement. It's all of ours. We've proven that anything is possible, as long as we work together." Musk's voice softened. "That's what I've always believed. You've given us hope, Kris. Hope that the future is brighter than we ever imagined." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Kris allowed himself to truly feel the magnitude of their accomplishment. They had ventured into the depths of space, braved dangers no one had ever faced before, and come back not just with data, but with hope. They had proven that humanity could achieve the impossible. The crew gathered in the central command room as the spacecraft began its journey back toward the outer planets. They were all weary, but their spirits were high. The hard work was far from over, but they had proven their technology, their resilience, and their ability to work as a team. There was nothing they couldn't face together. Kris looked out the viewport one last time, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. Earth was still far away, but it felt closer now. He could almost feel the pull of home, the warmth of the sun, the green of the trees, the laughter of loved ones. It was a pull that he knew would guide him, just as it had guided humanity for centuries. "We've made history," Kris said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "But this is just the beginning. There's more to explore, more to learn, and I won't stop until we reach the stars." As the spacecraft turned toward Earth, the stars ahead seemed a little less distant, the journey a little less daunting. Kris knew that there would be more obstacles, more unknowns, and more challenges. But as long as they kept pushing forward, humanity would continue to reach for the stars. And with every step, they would take the universe one step closer to understanding the vastness that lay beyond. What's next for Kris and his team? Will they continue to push the boundaries of space exploration? Let us know your thoughts on what the future holds in the comments.